With Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, our positional previews continue here at Volquest.com, taking a look at the linebackers. Interesting, when you talk about linebacker, everybody wants to know about one guy, J.J. Peterson. What's the latest on him? We'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk about a couple of the veterans for Tennessee, Daniel Petulli, Darrell Taylor. Obviously, if this defense is going to be much improved in year two under Jeremy Pruitt, it's got to start with those two guys.
Those two guys have to be huge, and not only consistent, but they've got to create disruptive plays, which Darrell Taylor, as the year went on, got better and better. I mean, finished the year with 10.5 tackles for loss, led Tennessee with 8 sacks, and they tend to take another step up. Daniel Petulli, lots of tackles, not quite as disruptive. 6 tackles for a loss. I think if you're looking for improvement, you want to see him making more plays behind the line of scrimmage.
We hear from Jeremy Pruitt, this defense is real simple. Once you get the concepts down, then you hear from Daniel Petulli in the spring, and he's talking about how much easier it is the second go around because you get an understanding of it. Just for that group in general, how much more effective do you think they can be in year two of this system?
I think that's kind of a common conception, and I think it's usually borne out. You would hope that would be the case for sure, but I think that pretty clearly they were swimming early in the year, and I thought you saw some drop off, I think because of injuries and depth and fatigue and stuff. But I think guys got more comfortable with the system as it went along, and in Petulli in particular, I think you're talking about a cerebral kid who is kind of going to be calling the shots there on the second level, running the defense. I think that him feeling more comfortable leads to everybody else feeling more comfortable since he's so integral to getting guys lined up.
It will be interesting to see if they move him around and how much they use him off the edge or do different things with him. Shannon Reed, Will Ignont, 2 veteran guys that are trying to find a place. I don't want to say they've been recruited over, but they've recruited some highly recruited guys, some highly acclaimed guys behind them. They got to make some hay early, I think, in August because they are going to get pushed.
Very much so, and I think both those guys probably had a nice spring. I think Shannon Reed was probably one of the surprises of the spring, a guy that I personally have kind of had written off, right. Didn't fit in with what the new staff was going to do, and I think he kind of flashed. Ignont looked like he had a little grasp of the system, but as you mentioned, probably some of the stars of this incoming recruiting class are at that linebacker position.
Well, and that's what we'll get to. J.J. Peterson, can he stay healthy? What can he do after being here for a year? Quavaris Crouch looks the part, still learning the position, and Henry To'oto may be the most prepared guy of the freshmen or of the newcomers coming in because he has played linebacker at a high level at a highly acclaimed high school.
Yeah, I was going to say the competition, the school he's coming from, and Crouch to me in the spring was one of the biggest surprises among the freshmen, just as you mentioned, physically. I didn't expect him to be that thick. I thought he looked, would be more of a Raynoch Thompson as a freshman linebacker, and he was not. He looked the part.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how quickly he can learn that. Then what do you do with a guy like Jordan Allen? Does he find a place at all to help you?
Big year for him.
What do you do with Peterson again if he can get in, get acclimated into the system? So some youth behind them, a lot of questions.
Yeah, and we didn't mention Roman Harrison, who looks like he might have been kind of a hidden gem in this recruiting class, and I think is impressing people since he's gotten on campus.
What we know is Jeremy Pruitt wants playmakers at that linebacker position. Maybe they're not all 3 down guys, but they want to sub in all those sub packages. They want a guy who can do some stuff off the edge. He needs that group. With the concerns they got on the defensive line, they have got to make a lot of plays, particularly against the run.
Tons, and arguably your 2 biggest playmakers are at the position. They're your 2 biggest proven playmakers, in Darrell Taylor and Petulli.
Yeah, Taylor probably the most talked about NFL prospect on this roster. Petulli with a ton of talent. Be an interesting fall camp for those guys. Who emerges? Who pushes whom? And where does everybody line up at the linebacker spot? It's going to be interesting to watch to see how it is in Derek Ansley's offense or defense as well as Jeremy Pruitt's. For the linebackers, that's Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs.